Boyfriend invited his friend's pregnant family to live in our tiny apartment without asking me, and now I'm panicking over space and stress. My boyfriend and I live in a 2-bedroom 1-bathroom apartment in a very expensive area. Rent is around $3,000 per month, and we're both stressed out college students. This guy has been best friends with my boyfriend since high school, and they regularly keep in touch and drive to see each other. My boyfriend and I live in NorCal while they live more south. The friend has not been in a good financial situation for the last 2 years. He dropped out of community college after he got a girl pregnant, and they ended up getting married after she gave birth. She is now 7 months pregnant with their second child. My boyfriend and I usually go down to visit them together, and we always pay for meals, and I always try to buy a couple of toys for their 2-year-old. We have been in contact with them since last night. They were able to safely evacuate and bring some essentials, including their car, but their house has burned down. My heart aches for their family, and I really want to help them by transferring money, or even calling some of my friends who live in SoCal to see if they are willing to take them in. But during a FaceTime call this morning, my boyfriend immediately, without any hesitation or asking me, offered up our small apartment to them. They were very thankful, and at first said that it would be too much for us, but my boyfriend insisted and they graciously accepted in the end. I was in the background fairly silent the entire time. After my boyfriend hung up, I asked him why he just extended the offer without even asking me, and he acted shocked and said that he thought that I would 100% support his decision. I told him that I would have in any other living situation, but we are 2 poor college students, living in a small-ass apartment in an expensive area, and it is definitely going to be more than difficult to accommodate his friend, his pregnant wife, and toddler. My boyfriend said that I was being a bit selfish and that they just lost their house and that I should be more understanding and sympathetic. And don't get me wrong, I agree that I'm being selfish, but I am also being reasonable and trying to think rationally. I may be a bit biased since I am in the middle of preparing for the MCAT, which I'm taking in January, and I really need to do well on it, and dear God, it is not an easy test. My boyfriend and I are both in very stressful majors that require a shit ton of work and studying, and on top of that, he and I both are working part-time. I feel like I'm already so stressed out right now with school, work, and everything. I look forward to quiet time in our apartment that we get to spend. I digress, but I can't help but think of how this changes everything. Of course, this is probably temporary, even though my boyfriend said they could stay as long as they need to, but right now is really not the time. My boyfriend and I argued over this for an hour, and I ended up just heading out for the day. My boyfriend is sticking to his plan, and he texted me saying that he's sorry and that he knows it'll be hard, but to remember we're doing a good thing and supporting our friends in a time of crisis. I couldn't help but think that it was really his friend, and not ours, but I might just be being bitter. They are planning to drive up tomorrow morning. I am just so worried, stressed, and my anxiety is through the roof. I came home around 2 hours ago and noticed that my boyfriend has already set up a mattress in our second bedroom, which is our office/work area, and set up the couch. I burst into tears and almost had a panic attack. I just don't know how to deal with toddlers, and I also don't know how to support and take care of a pregnant woman. My boyfriend comforted me, but I can't help but feel a bit resentful right now. He agreed to this without asking me, and I can't fight back now. I would seem like such a horrible person. I'm still crying in our room as I'm typing this, and my boyfriend went out to stock up on groceries. God, I don't know what to do and I feel so panicky. What can I do at this point? Reddit? I'm at a complete loss. Edit, pretty relevant piece of information that I left out because I did not want to impose any unnecessary bias. Now I see its relevance. Update 1. The pregnant wife, husband, and toddler arrived at our apartment last night around 9:30 p.m. They had already told us on the way that their toddler contracted some kind of food poisoning and was not feeling well, which is what delayed them. Me and my boyfriend go down to greet them, and we realize that they have so much luggage. There were 2 large suitcases, a duffel bag, and like 4 Trader Joe's shopping bags filled with random stuff and half-eaten food. Okay, cool. That's gonna be fun lugging up the stairs. So my boyfriend and the husband starts to bring up their stuff, while I stay back and half carry the pregnant wife up the stairs because she feels too tired and nauseous. We get upstairs and I ask where Jake, the toddler, is. And the wife realizes she forgot to unbuckle him from the car seat and left him in there. She asked if I could go down and grab him. I wanted to say, not my forgotten toddler, not my responsibility, but alas, I decided to try to be gracious at least for the first day, so I went down and unstrapped the toddler, who looked visibly sick. There were literally 2 bags of vomit next to him, which I removed from the car and threw in the trash, because it would have been forgotten and become a severe health hazard. I tried to see if he can walk, and he started crying and started dragging himself on the ground, so I picked him up and carried him up the stairs. I set the kid down next to our couch, and Lord Almighty, this kid did not look good. His cheeks were flushed really red. There was dried vomit caked on his face, and his breathing seemed quick/rapid. I feel his forehead and it feels really hot to the touch, so I run to the bathroom to get a thermometer. While I'm digging for the thermometer, I hear, again? Are you fucking kidding me, Jake? So I rush out, and indeed, fucking hell, the tot is thrown up all over our carpet. I wanted to cry. I run to the kitchen to grab paper towels, but the pregnant wife was already using some sort of napkin/cloth to sop it up, but she was smearing it and making it worse, and I wanted to die. I came to help her, and the tot is screaming at this point while she is yelling at him to shut the fuck up. My boyfriend and the husband came over to help, but the wife told them to go away because she got it handled. The wife asks if I would mind taking him to the bathroom to rinse him, and the only reason why I say yes is because I'm seriously worried about the kid. I strip him and run warm water in our tub and put him in. Then I put a thermometer in his mouth and lo and behold, he has a temperature of 106 degrees. Not a good sign at all. That paired with symptoms of vomiting, rapid breathing, and looking really lethargic is a combination good enough for the ER. So I yell for the mother to get to the bathroom and ask her where she thinks he got the food poisoning from. She says she doesn't know and that he's just eaten fruit for the past 2 days. I'm freaking out because his symptoms are consistent with meningitis. Poor kid keeps grabbing his head and crying, so clearly he has a headache too. I ask her if she's gotten him vaccinated for meningitis and she said she doesn't think he's been vaccinated at all. I'm going into panic now. I feel Jake's neck and try to ask him slowly if he feels like it's difficult to move. He just cries more. I ask her to call for my BF and husband and explain the situation to them, and the husband confirms that the baby has not gotten vaccinated for the meningococcal box, so it's a no-brainer at this point. I tell them how life-threatening this infection is and that it may leave Jake paralyzed. The wife bursts into tears and gives the okay, so all 4 of us plus Jake get in their car to drive to the ER. My boyfriend is driving and I'm in the back cradling Jake and checking for rashes on his arms and legs with a cell phone flashlight. The wife is still crying. I am close to crying. We finally get to the ER and I tell them there is a 2-year-old with symptoms blah blah and blah, with no vaccination for meningitis, and we suspect he has it. They immediately bring him in and asked me if I was the parent, and I said no and pointed to the wife who was trailing behind me in tears. They brought her in with the toddler and told me to stay in the waiting area. At this point, I take my first breath. 5 minutes later, the husband and my boyfriend come rushing in and I tell the husband to go talk to staff so they could bring him in. He does and my boyfriend comes to hug me and fuck it, I just start bawling my eyes out. He keeps telling me he's sorry and that it's his fault. I'm still crying into him. He calls an Uber for me and tells me to go home and get some sleep and that he'll handle the rest. I'm too tired to resist, so I get home at like 12 a.m., brush my teeth, and just crash after I got a text saying they put him on antibiotics and are waiting for blood test results and the culture, but that he was stable. I wake up the next morning at like 10 a.m. and the apartment is like super quiet and my boyfriend isn't in bed next to me. So I get up and walk into our living area and see him sleeping on the couch and not a single luggage bag or pregnant wife in sight. I nudge my boyfriend awake and he tells me everything that happened. The toddler is in the ICU and my boyfriend managed to get a hotel nearby for them for half the price after telling them what had happened. He paid for a week-long stay for them and then helped move everything out of the apartment and to the hotel with the husband while the wife was at the hospital. He kept saying he was sorry and that he didn't think anything through and for me to forgive him. I said it was okay and hugged him. It turned out to be one hell of an experience I don't ever want to relive again, but I'm glad Jake is safe and I'm glad they won't be living with us. Also, some key points that people keep missing. The pregnant wife, husband, and toddler chose to drive over 600 miles to live in our 2BD2B instead of living with the husband's wealthy, only around 200 miles away, family, who were also the ones to pay for their house and house them for 2 years. I have my suspicions as to why this is the case, but you make your own judgments. Update 2. The morning after my boyfriend moved them into the hotel, we decided to check on Jake at the hospital. I was still emotionally drained, but I felt like I owed it to the little guy to see how he was doing. When we got to the ICU, the wife was sitting in the corner scrolling through her phone, looking completely exhausted but eerily detached. The husband was at Jake's bedside, gently stroking his hair. The moment we walked in, the wife sighed dramatically and said, "Oh, thank God, you guys are here. Can you sit with him? I need to go grab some Starbucks." I froze. My boyfriend hesitated for a second, then nodded and said, "Of course, go ahead." The second she left the room, the husband rubbed his face in frustration. "She didn't even sleep last night," he muttered. "Just sat there on her phone, texting." I didn't say anything, but my gut was screaming. Jake looked a little better, still hooked up to IVs and exhausted, but his fever had gone down. When I touched his tiny hand, he opened his eyes slightly and mumbled something I couldn't hear. My heart clenched. While we were sitting there in silence, my boyfriend's phone buzzed. It was a text from the wife. "Wife, so I know this is a bad time to ask, but do you think we could stay in the hotel for another 2 weeks? We're kinda low on cash." I almost choked. 2 weeks? My boyfriend showed me the message with a look of horror, and I just shook my head violently. We had already paid for their first week, it was time for her to ask her wealthy in-laws. He politely replied that we couldn't afford more time, but suggested she ask her husband's family. Her response? "Wife, oh, we're not really on good terms with them right now. They're super controlling and judgy, and I just don't want to deal with their negativity. You know how they are." Oh, I bet I knew how they were. Probably the same way I was feeling right now, judgy as hell. But that wasn't even the worst part. About an hour later, while we were still sitting with Jake, the wife came back with a huge Starbucks order. Not just a coffee, but a full-blown feast, 2 frappuccinos, a breakfast sandwich, and a massive cake pop assortment. I watched in stunned silence as she sat down and started casually eating, not even offering her husband anything. And then she said, between bites of cake pop, "So, I was thinking, Would you guys be able to help us get a new car? Ours is kinda falling apart. I almost screamed. I almost threw her damn frappuccino across the room. My boyfriend, bless his soul, just blinked at her and said, "Yeah. I don't think we can do that." She shrugged. Just thought I'd ask. At that point, I had to leave the room before I exploded. I told my boyfriend I'd meet him in the car, and I power walked out of the hospital, my blood boiling. In the car, I pulled up her Instagram out of sheer pettiness, and guess what? She had just posted a story. A boomerang of her Starbucks order. Caption? Self-care #IckyLife. I slammed my phone down. Nope. I was done. When my boyfriend finally joined me in the car, he sighed and said, "So, I think we need to have a serious talk about boundaries." You think? I snapped, and that's when we made a decision. We were cutting them off. No more money. No more favors. No more being their personal safety net. The next morning, my boyfriend called the husband and told him we couldn't financially support them anymore, and that they needed to reach out to his family. The husband was surprisingly understanding, but the wife? She texted me paragraphs about how I was a heartless, selfish person who didn't understand how hard it was to be a mother. I left her on read. A few days later, we found out through a mutual friend that they had begrudgingly gone to the husband's family for help, and guess what? They took them in and even offered to pay for a small rental. So they had a safety net all along. Moral of the story? Some people will take as much as you let them. Update 3. A few days after we cut them off, I was finally starting to feel normal again. No more random panic attacks, no more stress-induced stomach aches. I was even able to focus on studying for the MCAT again. Life was getting back on track. And then I got a Venmo request. From her. For $3,000. The description? For everything you've put us through. I had to physically put my phone down and take several deep breaths. I showed my boyfriend, expecting him to be just as stunned, but instead, he just laughed. Like, full on, exhausted, I can't believe this shit laughed. Then he grabbed his phone, took a screenshot of the request, and sent it to the husband with a simple, "Dude, what is this?" We waited. 30 minutes later, my boyfriend's phone buzzed. It was the husband. Husband, I don't even know what to say, man. I'm so sorry. I didn't know she did that. Apparently, she had sent that request without telling him. And when he confronted her about it, she doubled down. She started ranting about how we traumatized her by not being more supportive, how I had made her feel like a bad mother, and how my boyfriend should have been a better friend by helping them more. At this point, my boyfriend had had it. He told the husband, word for word, "Dude, I'm not trying to be a dick, but you need to control your wife. She is way out of line. We have done nothing but help you guys, and she's acting like we owe her our life savings. This is insane." And you know what the husband said? "I know. But I don't know what to do anymore." That was the moment it clicked. This guy was trapped. It all made sense. Why he never stood up to her, why he let her run the show, why he looked so damn exhausted all the time. I had assumed they were just entitled as a couple, but no. This was all her. And he was too beaten down to do anything about it. After that, we blocked her on everything. Venmo, Instagram, phone numbers, you name it, she was gone. I told my boyfriend if the husband ever needed help as an individual, we'd be there. But his wife? Absolutely not, but of course, it still wasn't over. 3 days later, I got a call from a random number. I ignored it. Then I got a voicemail. It was the wife's mother. And she was pissed. She left this long-winded, passive-aggressive voicemail about how her daughter had been through enough and how I should feel ashamed for abandoning a pregnant woman in her time of need. Oh. So now we're calling reinforcements? I didn't even bother responding. I blocked the number and moved on with my day. But get this, my boyfriend later found out from another mutual friend that this woman had been telling people that we kicked them out onto the street with nowhere to go. Now, I may be a lot of things, but I am not a liar. And I was done letting her twist the truth. So, I texted the husband one last time. I told him that if his wife did not stop spreading lies about us, I would personally make a post explaining everything, with receipts. I even attached a screenshot of her Venmo request for dramatic effect. He left me on read. But the next day? We found out she had deleted all of her posts about us. So yeah. I think that's the end of it. For now. Update 4. 2 days after the last incident, my boyfriend got a text from the husband. It was short and weirdly formal. "Husband, hey man, I just wanted to let you know, wife is thinking about taking legal action. She feels like she was wronged." Excuse me, what? I had to read the message twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. Was she seriously trying to sue us? For what? For not letting her live in our apartment rent-free while she screamed at her sick toddler and sent me unsolicited Venmo requests? At this point, my boyfriend was done playing nice. He texted back, "Legal action for what exactly?" Because I have an entire trail of messages, calls, and transactions that show we did nothing but help you guys. And if she wants to play that game, we can take this public. A full 24 hours passed with no response. Then, finally, "Husband, I don't think she'll go through with it. I just wanted to warn you." You just wanted to warn us? Maybe warn your wife instead of enabling her madness? We blocked both of them after that. I was exhausted. We had gone out of our way to help them, only to have her act like a victim and try to extort money from us. Enough was enough. But then, yesterday, I got a letter in the mail. From them. It was handwritten, 3 pages long, and when I saw the return address, I almost choked. They had moved in with her parents. The same wealthy family they originally refused to stay with. The ones who had bought them their old house in the first place. I read the letter, and I swear to God, I felt my soul leave my body. It was basically a long-winded, manipulative essay about how we had betrayed their trust, how I had been cruel and unsupportive, and, get this, how my boyfriend had let his relationship change him. But the part that really sent me? The last page was a list of expenses they had apparently racked up while staying with us. Groceries, $250, gas money for the drive, $100, carpet cleaning, for the vomit incident, $75, emotional distress, $2,000, I am not even joking, and at the bottom, in bold letters, total, $2,425. Please send payment within 30 days. I almost threw up from laughing. I showed it to my boyfriend, and he just sighed, grabbed a pen, and wrote in huge letters across the back, Lamau. No. We put it back in the envelope and dropped it back in the mailbox, addressed right back to them. I don't know if they actually expected us to take that seriously, but either way, we are done. No more warnings, no more responses, nothing. They burned every bridge, torched the remains, and then tried to bill us for the gas. I can't even be mad anymore. At this point, I'm just in awe of how unhinged she is. Update 5. So, remember how we returned their ridiculous invoice with Lamau? No. Written across it? Well, apparently, that did not sit well with them. Because 2 days later, I got a call from an unknown number. I don't usually answer those, but I was half asleep and didn't think. The second I picked up, I regretted it. It was her. Before I could even say anything, she launched into this Oscar-worthy performance, sobbing into the phone about how we had traumatized her family, how her toddler was still recovering from the hospital stay, and how she was willing to negotiate the $2,425 we owed her. I nearly choked on my own spit. I managed to get out, "We don't owe you anything," but she just kept going. She claimed that because they had to go to the hospital on our watch, we were responsible for all of their financial troubles. The best part? She even tried to say that our apartment had made her son sick, because it was too cold and stressful. Lady. Your kid had meningitis. That's not something you catch from bad vibes. I told her to lose our number, and before hanging up, she hit me with this gem: "You should be ashamed of yourself. Women are supposed to support other women, not tear them down." Oh, so now I'm the problem? Got it. I blocked her immediately. But, of course, she wasn't done. That same evening, my boyfriend got a message from the husband. This time, instead of being passive-aggressive, he was weirdly apologetic. Husband: "Hey man, I just wanted to say I'm sorry about everything. Wife has been really stressed, and I think she's not handling things well. I appreciate everything you did for us." Sounds reasonable, right? Maybe even the start of an actual apology? Wrong. Because literally 5 minutes later, my boyfriend gets another message. Husband: "By the way, if you could Venmo me like $500 just to help us out a bit, I'd really appreciate it." What? My boyfriend just stared at his phone for a second and then burst out laughing. He didn't even respond. Just blocked him on the spot. But the grand finale? This morning, we got a notification from Venmo. She sent us a payment request. For $2,425. She really thinks we're going to pay. At this point, I don't even know what to say. Do they think if they just keep asking, we'll suddenly change our minds? My boyfriend reported the request as fraudulent, and we both blocked them on everything. Phone, Venmo, email, social media, gone. Update 6. 3 days after the infamous Venmo request, my boyfriend and I were having a much-needed relaxing evening. We'd ordered takeout, put on a movie, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like I could actually breathe. And then, a knock at the door. I froze. We weren't expecting anyone. My stomach dropped because I just knew, somehow, I knew, that it was them. My boyfriend got up, looked through the peephole, and turned back to me with a face that said, "You're not gonna believe this." It was the husband. Just the husband. I whispered, "Do not open it." But before I could stop him, my boyfriend swung the door open. And the guy, this absolute lunatic, had the audacity to smile like we were old friends catching up. "Hey, man," he said, as if he hadn't just tried to scam us out of thousands of dollars. He told us that he was in the area and thought he'd stop by to clear the air. In the area? Buddy, we live 600 miles away from you. I immediately felt ice-cold rage settle over me. This wasn't a coincidence. He drove all the way up here because we blocked them. The last-ditch manipulation attempt, I stayed back, arms crossed, just watching. My boyfriend, who is normally the most patient, level-headed guy, was done. He didn't even say hello. Just straight up, "Why are you here?" The husband launched into some bizarre sob story about how they were struggling, how his wife was in a bad place, How we were their last hope because family sticks together. Family? Oh, so now we're family? After his wife cursed at me, trashed our apartment, tried to shake us down for money, and dragged us into their reckless mess? I stayed quiet, but, my boyfriend? He lit him up. He told him we don't owe them anything. That we helped them more than anyone else had. That his wife's entitlement and toxicity had burned every last bridge they had. And the husband, this grown-ass man, had the nerve to look shocked. Like he genuinely couldn't believe we weren't going to bail them out again. Then he said something that nearly made my soul leave my body. Well, we don't have anywhere to stay tonight. I swear to God, my vision turned red, because suddenly, it all made sense. The real reason he was here, this wasn't about an apology. This wasn't about clearing the air. They had planned this. They drove up here with no place to stay, assuming that if they just showed up at our door, we'd be forced to let them in. I lost it. I said something along the lines of, that is not our problem. You have family, you have resources, you have people who have done way more for you than we have, and you still screwed them over. You need to leave. Now. And you know what this man said? You're really gonna do this to a pregnant woman? Oh my God. I almost screamed. I took a step forward and said, get the FCK off our property. My boyfriend backed me up immediately. He told him if he didn't leave right now, we were calling the cops. Finally, the reality seemed to hit him. He got pissed. The whole sad, struggling father act dropped. You guys are so f-king selfish, he snapped, as if we owed them anything after the absolute circus they put us through. Then, like the dramatic man baby he is, he stormed off, got in his car, and sped off into the night. We stood there for a moment, stunned. Then my boyfriend turned to me and said, I'm getting the locks changed tomorrow. The aftermath: the next morning, my boyfriend followed through and got our locks changed. Just in case, I reached out to some mutual friends and found out that the husband and wife didn't go back home. Instead, they'd been bouncing between cheap motels and random acquaintances' houses, burning every last bridge they had. Apparently, the husband had been begging his wealthy parents to take them back in. They refused. And get this, his own mother told mutuals that we made the right call cutting them off. His own mother. I honestly don't know what's going to happen to them, and at this point, I don't care. We blocked every possible avenue they could contact us through. I made sure our workplaces, school, and landlord knew we weren't accepting visitors. We're officially free.